Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi everyone, Stewart Andrew Alexander here, and on this segment of the show we have child abuse and family law attorney Allison C. Williams of the Williams Law Group LLC. Now, Allison is calling in all the way from Short Hills, New Jersey. And among the skills that Allison has, she specializes in the topic of child abuse and neglect representation, and we'll be talking about how child abuse and neglect concerns can be addressed in court. So, with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Allison. Are you there?
I am here. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm looking forward to speaking about this topic.
Great, Allison. We're so happy to have you on the show also. So, can you briefly describe, in your own words, of course, the kind of people who you serve and the kinds of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for help?
Sure. So my firm handles all forms of family law cases, and we serve a wide array of citizens across New Jersey, including men and women, mothers and fathers, all age ranges, all races, going through some sort of family law situation involving the court system. And typically those situations overlap the topic of child abuse and neglect. Those allegations usually arise from the adverse party, meaning if it's a mother we're representing, the father has made a claim, or vice versa. Or it could be a third party, such as a doctor, a therapist, or some school personnel that has made a report either directly or that has landed in the lap of Child Protective Services. The parents are either accused of some form of abuse, so they help, they seek out our help for representation to defend them, or they believe that their child has been abused or neglected in some way, and they feel that Child Protective Services really has not adequately helped them to keep their child safe. So that's when they come to us to basically take up the charge of Child Protective Services. Many times these issues involve topics that I'm sure all of us have in some way encountered in our families or in our communities, issues such as substance abuse, mental health disorders, domestic violence, excessive corporal punishment, educational neglect, undiagnosed medical injuries, sexual abuse, or boundary violations. And we both assert these claims as well as defend these claims in Child Protective Services cases brought by the state, as well as in ongoing divorces, post-judgment divorce matters, custody cases between parties who have never been married, and in domestic violence proceedings.
Okay, some very important work that you're doing out there and having an impact on people's lives, Allison. So thanks for sharing that with us. So on that note, when you think about the people who come to you for help then, Allison, what's the most common misconception they have surrounding the topic of child abuse and neglect?
Well, when most people think of child abuse and neglect, they have a very contorted sense of what that means. I think most people would think of a child that's battered and crying in the corner, or perhaps a child that's claiming to have been sexually abused by a parent. Certainly those cases are out there, and we do handle those cases. But there's far more of what is addressed by the Child Protective Services agency deals with allegations of maltreatment or neglect. In fact, that's about 80% of their caseload, and about 80% of the cases that are brought in superior court. In court, when spouses or former partners are alleging the issue of abuse, the agency investigation does play a role because in all states across the United States, you are required to make a report of child abuse or neglect anytime that you have reason to believe that a child has been abused. That's a part of a federal statute. So when those claims come up, the agency does investigate. However, whatever the agency does, there is a role to play in educating the court system about how to deal with that information. Because a lot of times, judges are inclined to simply say, well, if the agency believes there's child abuse, that's what we're going to act upon. We're going to proceed as if the child has been abused, which is not always the case. And so you spend a lot of time helping people who are accused or people who believe their child has been abused understand that child abuse is not a poor person's problem, and it's not an allegation that only surrounds poor parenting. You can be a perfectly capable parent and still be accused of some form of misconduct. And depending on how good your caseworker is or how overburdened the Child Protective Services agency is at any point in time, that will often impact the outcome of your investigation. And that's where we step in.
So with that in mind then, Allison, could you share with us an example or a case study, so to speak, of somebody who came to you with that misconception, that common misconception that you mentioned, and how you helped them to overcome that and what kind of results you were able to gain? If you could share that with us, that would be really useful for the listeners out there.
Sure. So I have probably thousands of stories I could give you at this point, but one that sticks in my mind and is kind of near and dear to my heart as a client, I'll refer to her simply as Mom. And Mom comes into my office and says that she believes that her then 4-year-old daughter had been sexually abused by the father. The father and the mother had separated. They had a domestic violence matter. The mother did not get a restraining order, but she sought one because she felt fearful of her safety. And at some point, the child made a disclosure to her. So she notified the authorities, they investigated, and the child didn't feel comfortable, as young children often do not, disclosing to the agency what she had told her mother. So at some point, the agency completed its investigation and said, we cannot substantiate this claim of abuse because the child did not make a disclosure to us, put the child in therapy, and have a mental health professional work with her, and maybe she'll open up in the future. Well, of course, my client was beside herself. She didn't want to turn her child over again to the father, who she believed had been abusing the child. So we went to court and we filed our own Child Protective Services action, noting that the agency had, in our view, gotten it wrong and that they had failed to protect the child, and that it's my client's obligation as the mother to protect the child. And so we wanted a protective restraint on the father having access to the child until a completed investigation could happen. And that was about 2.5 years ago at this point. The father is actually still being supervised with the child because he hasn't complied with various mental health services. But of course, now the child is older and has learned a lot about how to protect her boundaries and has learned how to self-advocate. And of course, the father has now been under a watchful eye for quite some time. So the child has gotten kind of the benefit, if you will, of both worlds. She's gotten the protection that she's needed to not be alone with someone who most likely did have some form of inappropriate sexual contact with her. But she also had the ability, the time to grow and become more protective of herself. So she's more aware of her body. She can now identify when something's done wrong, and she can be more concise about it if, God forbid, something were to ever happen, assuming that the father ever gets unsupervised time. But that's usually what we find ourselves helping people with. They come to us, and we have to not just create a solution to try to get them exactly what they want, but we have to really focus on what is going to get their child to the point of safety and ensuring that safety is always at the forefront of the court's mind. And that's really what our role is.
So, Allison, let me ask you this. Do the cases of child abuse and neglect often lead to cases of divorce?
Oh, absolutely. We have many clients that, the first time that they decide that they're going to stand up for themselves and end what is a toxic relationship that may not have ever become physically abusive or even emotionally abusive, but it's just an unhealthy relationship, is when the unhealthy engagement with the partner has been transferred over to the child. Maybe the child became the scapegoat. Maybe the child was getting some of the anger that was otherwise directed at the parties between themselves when they'd be arguing and things like that. And so we have a lot of cases where the child abuse case breaks apart the marriage or causes the marriage to ultimately lead to divorce proceedings.
So, taking the topic of how child abuse and neglect concerns can be addressed in court, what's one of the biggest unknown pitfalls out there that people should be but may not be aware of then, please, Allison?
Well, what I would highly recommend is that for any person that has Child Protective Services show up at their door or contact them, just remain calm, don't panic. It's always very jarring for people and they don't know what's going to happen. I would always tell them this, that the agency has to make sure that your child is safe. Even if you know that they're safe, the agency is not allowed to simply defer to you. You have to give them the opportunity to physically see your children to make sure that they are okay in the moment. That is something they're supposed to do within 24 hours of coming out for any type of investigation. Beyond seeing your child, they do not have to come into your home right away. If they believe that there is an imminent risk of harm, they will have the ability to remove your child. So you don't want to have so much anxiety around the fact that they are there, that you throw up a wall and give them more cause for concern and they come back with the police and remove your child without question. You really want to give them an opportunity to allay the immediate concerns that they may have. And beyond that, you should tell the caseworker that you want to have an opportunity to speak with an attorney. Typically, they will give you that opportunity, give you the time to consult with an attorney. It's going to be a short turnaround time, so you need to find somebody quickly, but they will give you that time as long as it's clear that you're not obstructing, that you just want to have an opportunity to understand your rights and responsibilities in the process. Now, beyond that, once you decide you're going to seek an attorney, if you're not already going through a divorce and you don't have an attorney on call, when you're looking for an attorney, it's very important that you find someone with both credentials in child abuse as well as in family law. You don't want to just hire somebody who has experience with divorce, because they oftentimes won't know what to tell you to do with the Child Protective Services Agency. The agency has a higher level of power, and you're not on equal footing with them the way that you are with a former spouse or your existing spouse in a divorce. So you want to make sure that the person who's advising you knows the ins and outs, knows what you are entitled to say yes and no to, and knows what the ramifications of that are for your divorce case or post-judgment for your custody case. On the other hand, you don't want to hire somebody who just has child abuse experience, because those cases are typically handled by people getting cases from the public defender's office. And the public defender's office does not have a grant to fund litigation or legal representation for people who are not in court. So if this is the investigation stage, they have not yet decided to go to court. You're not entitled to an attorney through the public defender's office. So a lot of the public defenders don't have the knowledge of what to do before the matter gets to court. They typically have experience with what happens once you get there. So you need somebody who has both angles of it, somebody who sees what happens behind closed doors in the court proceedings, and somebody who knows family law inside and out.
Allison, do you really enjoy what you do?
I absolutely love what I do. It's one of the greatest gifts that I have, that I get to come to work every day and I get to help people every single day that I come here.
Okay, so with that said, could you briefly, in your own words, of course, tell us a little bit about yourself? Because I'm sure someone's out there listening right now, and you've shared lots of great information. It's been very educational, very informational, and they're probably thinking, well, who is Allison Williams? So if you could just briefly tell us a little bit about your background, your education and your experience as it all relates to the topic of child abuse.
Sure. So I started my career as a family law attorney, and in that area I became very accomplished in family law. I am board certified, meaning certified by the Supreme Court of New Jersey as a matrimonial law attorney, and I am also a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, which is a national organization that is the preeminent organization of family law and matrimonial law attorneys in the country. I'm also the first attorney in New Jersey to become certified by the National Board of Trial Advocacy as a family law trial specialist. So I have a lot of trial experience, which is not common among family attorneys. I decided I was going to kind of shift my practice from family and matrimonial law to child abuse and neglect law when I handled a case that led to what I thought were catastrophic consequences for someone that really was just impaired and needed help. The person did not need to have the state land on her as it did. And, I got to see what cataclysmic change and powerful help we could offer to someone when you really learn the system. So I started focusing on learning the child welfare system, and I became very skilled at that. So at this point in time, our firm handles all forms of child abuse and neglect representation. We handle administrative appeals in the Office of Administrative Law. We also handle cases involving child abuse against a parent in state court, so that there are child abuse cases at this point in time, my office is handling 16 out of 19 counties across the state of New Jersey. And we've handled, as I noted earlier, all types of cases involving sex abuse, child abuse, physical abuse, fractures, neglect, corporal punishment, etc. I lecture about child abuse very frequently for the New Jersey Institute of Continuing Legal Education, so I educate lawyers and judges about how to handle these cases. And I publish frequently on the topic, so you'll see some of my published work in the New Jersey Lawyer, the New Jersey Family Lawyer, Divorce Magazine, and the Huffington Post. I have been on any number of television programs and news programs regarding child abuse issues, including the Katie Couric Show. I've been on News 12 and Pix 11, and one of my crowning achievements, I think, at this point is that I created a blog all about child abuse and neglect representation long before blogs were kind of the thing to do. I really created it as a portal just to give people information about the topic, and it just kind of turned out that people started finding me online looking for information. So I started posting more really almost out of habit because I just enjoyed the topic so much and helping people with it. And it was cited by the news media for issues that were pending before the New Jersey Supreme Court.
Allison, I'm quite disappointed that you have so little experience. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing your very rich background. It's obvious that you're an educator and an advocate for your clients' success. And yeah, we were coming towards the end of the show, Allison. I've just got one final question before we go. So when you think about the topic of child abuse and how child abuse and neglect concerns can be addressed in court, what would be your absolute best piece of advice to the listener today?
Well, I guess my top tip for people would be just to understand that if the agency makes a finding against you, it's not the end of the world. It's not a criminal finding, and it is not something that is actionable from a civil perspective. It is an agency finding. The agency finding is not dispositive of what happens between you and your children. So if the issue comes up and there's an allegation, if the allegation does not come out in your favor, you can absolutely still go to family court and ask the court to enter an order granting you access to your child. Now, of course, that means that you will have to address that allegation in some way. Most judges are not going to look past the agency finding, but the agency finding is not determinative and it's not dispositive of what's supposed to happen between you and your child. If you're found to have done something wrong, the state is required to offer you services to address the problem. You are entitled to defend the allegation so that if there's no need for services, you can combat those. And you really need to have a strong will and a strong heart focused on what's best for your child. If you keep that in your mind, you're definitely going to come out much better ahead, much farther along the process, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to overcome it as a family and move forward.
If there's somebody out there who's facing an allegation of child abuse or even wants to raise a case of child abuse, how would they be able to connect with you? How would they find you, Allison?
The easiest way to find us is online. So our website is www.newjersey, spelled out, BYSS, that's D as in David, Y as in you, F as in Frank, S as in Sam, defense.com. They also can find us located here in Short Hills at 830 Morris Turnpike. We are right off the main strip there. And, of course, they can always call our office at 908-810-1083.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much. That was Allison C. Williams. Thanks for sharing with us today, Allison. And thank you to you, the listener, for joining us on this really insightful and informative interview with one of the leading child abuse and family law attorneys in Short Hills, New Jersey today. So again, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more divorce professionals in this, our series of divorce-related conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.